Sand, sand, and more sand. Welcome to Sandland, an open-world action title developed by ILCA and published by Bandai Namco Entertainment. A video game adaptation of the manga serialization by the late Akira Toriyama, players will trek through the wastes of Sandland as Kid/Prince Demon Beelzebub, a desolate land of heat, trash, and more importantly, a severe lack of water. As for Beelzebub, he's a cocky kid but with a good heart. Along with Sheriff Rao, Thief, and Anne, the Motley Four head south to find the legendary spring to put an end to Sandland's drought once and for all. Forget the tropics. Find out what a barren desert has in store for you. Here's a hint: tanks, vehicles, explosions, and a heck of a lot of fun. Sandland is a fairly interesting title because it not only features hand-to-hand combat systems, but it's also very reliant on vehicle traversal and warfare. While you'll often spend a lot of time on the latter, building and outfitting your vehicles with the best of the best, you also want to keep leveling up Beelzebub along with his allies if you don't want to get snagged by multiple scorpions at once. Both the protagonist and your vehicle can level up, one organically through combat and quests, while the other can be done in Anne's garage once you've unlocked that, provided you have the parts and Zenny, of course. Let's talk about Beelzebub's combat first, easiest one to get out of the way. The King's Son can punch, kick, and punch harder with a series of X and B button presses. He has a skill tree that unlocks more combos, which will mostly just be swinging away awkwardly as there is no true lock-on, and you're dependent on builds swinging the right way. Sometimes you'll be forced into 2D sequences for platforming, which are, thankfully, blissfully short. Still, it's a serviceable system and only gets better as you unlock more skills. Rao and Thief can help too, with passive and active skills that you unlock for them. These can also be used during vehicle combat, which at the very least likely caught your eye in the marketing material. Sandland has a number of vehicle types at your disposal: your trusty tank, a motorcycle, cars, battle bots, and more. You start with the tank and will very slowly build your arsenal of parts and junk needed to upgrade and create new ones. There's a variety of weapons you can slap onto just about any vehicle, such as shotguns and chain guns on motorbikes and cars, while your tank and hoppers get explosive, fiery rounds and grenade launchers. Swapping engines and suspensions are key to going faster and buffing up your defense. Very important if you plan on tackling races. The vehicle controller is very responsive, and no matter the machine you control, you won't have a hard time picking up each model's quirks. For example, I would best describe the tank's controls as flying a Ghost in Halo 2, except you can drive it backwards and maintain the same level of control. The bikes and car can drift, the former being especially capable of everyone's favorite Akira drift sequence. Hoppers can bounce high, but you need to pay attention to its startup frames when walking, as it will not jump until after their initial startup walk. Trust me, I'm saving you from a lot of mistimed jumps here. Speaking of speed and defense, Sandland is a giant traversable wasteland, but it's no Mojave either. Sure, some of it is flat land, but a lot of it is twisty and turvy, with long ramps winding up hills, giant caverns, quicksand, the works. Exploring Sandland turned out to be a lot more fun than I expected, especially as I picked up more vehicles and figured out my way around things. The in-game map is fairly unhelpful though, as it doesn't do a good job of outlining the lay of the land, where things are above or below, but thankfully once you found the right path, you're set. And thank goodness for fast travel too. Water points are a good one, as they are one method of healing in the game, including full revivals if you get KO'd. Sadly, the map has its fair share of invisible walls and inaccessible locations as well, even if you could make it. Fall damage is a thing too, which is kinda weird because Beelzebub can fall quite the distance, but fall too much and it's game over? Fairly annoying, and I wish it was done away with. And at some point in the game's story, some areas become less traversable until you complete an accompanying quest. More points for the teeth grind. And for the extra salt in the wound, yellow paint makes a return for world signposting. I didn't like it in Resident Evil, nor the recent Vindictus closed alpha, and I definitely don't like it here. It's a lazy way to point players in the right direction. But despite these grievances, Sandland is a lot of fun. There's a lot of enemy variety, quests, and bounty hunts that take you to stronger variants of bosses you fought before, ancient ruins, caverns filled with loot, etc, etc. Sandland doesn't build the open world genre further in any way, but the focus on vehicle warfare and its accompanying customizations are its highlights. The sands of Sandland are beautiful, especially during daytime as you see the burning hot sun glare and bounce off the sand dunes and caves. The accompanying music is fitting, consisting of congas and a dynamic acoustic rhythm depending on your battle state. And then sometimes it gets a bit weird, faux chanting and synths giving off an apocalyptic vibe to the intended areas. For ILCA's first attempt at a true open world, and as far as I can remember, probably Bandai's, I'm left impressed. Sandland is a story-driven open world title, and one that is more than happy to shuffle you through as many cutscenes as it possibly can. Now they're not bad, far from it, I actually really enjoyed the game's story because of how weird it could get. No, not weird as in funny cartoon characters talking to one another. I mean, Sheriff Rao convinces Beelzebub to go on a very long journey with him by tossing him an old game console, kind of weird. Sandland gets goofy like this pretty often, but also does a great job of balancing that with themes of suffering and tragedies. Things do get bleak at times, but for the most part, end fairly happily. And though our cast of characters are dealing with the lowest of the low, scum, vagabonds, you name it, our heroes don't kill. Matter of fact, despite the large arsenal of weapons and geared up vehicles that are capable of all sorts of destruction at our table, all your baddies, and probably even Sandland's wildlife, do not die. Pretty impressive for our crew. Despite the exhaustive setting of the game, death is extremely rare. When it does happen, however, I found it to be impactful, and I definitely took note of that over the course of my playtime. The dump that is Sandland is largely in contribution to human nature, and the game's narrative is more than happy to slap you silly in reminder. But even then, through side quests and the mainline adventure, you see the bright side of humanity. All side quests are voiced, and our heroes have plenty of things to say to one another while they're exploring, particularly regarding any quests that you're actively taking on. Beelzebub's dynamic with Rao works really well, thanks to the odd difference in age but available wisdom, which is bounced off of Thief and occasionally Anne when she tags along. It's fun listening to these characters, and was for me a driving force in pursuing every available quest I could get to. Naturally, a lot of these side quests will help you on your adventure to the spring. Not only are you saving the inhabitants of Sandland one by one, but they'll join your hub, Spino, and help it prosper into a beautiful town, making your trips for parts easier and giving you other forms of customization, such as being able to paint your vehicles and the likes. World-building mechanics like this always make me feel good, as it gives a player a good sense of progression that doesn't just involve the main story, even if technically Spino's growth is tied to it. As it is an open-world game, unfortunately conversations have a habit of getting cut short if you get to your destination faster than the developers intended. Sometimes it will restart proper, but like many games, they'll be lost to the wind, especially if it was quest related. Big bummer, but I do give credit for trying, as it isn't as common a function as they should be. Speaking of functions, most cutscenes in Sandland are fairly basic, but the key cutscenes where major story development occurs look great, and as far as I can tell, are mostly in-engine. Sandland also doesn't fade to black for encounters, properly transitioning the player from cutscene right into gameplay. Speaking of cutscenes, this game has a lot of dialogue, available in English and Japanese voiceovers. I stuck with English and enjoyed the main cast's performance, though I did take issue with voice direction at times. Rao especially, as sometimes he'd be yelling in situations that didn't call for it, or suddenly go from talking in a normal voice to barking out dialogue. Secondary characters were hit and miss, sometimes doing pretty well with the material at hand and other times really phoning it in. Sandland offers a big, beautiful dust bowl for players to explore to their heart's content. I found its story and its characters to be the main driver for my playthrough, but the fun vehicle combat went hand in hand in my enjoyment of the game. All in all, it's a great adaptation of a legend's work.